Hello, today I'm here to bring you the first part of my July wrap-up. This month is going a lot better than last month did. I've read 3 books, whereas this time last month I don't think I had finished anything. This is still less than I would like to have read, but I'm still a lot happier with it that it's better than last month was. So I'm going to get straight into it. I started the month by rereading The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Now, a lot of people will know that this is a series at the moment on Channel 4, and I watched the first episode of that series. I decided that I wanted to revisit the book before I continued with it. I think watching that first episode did hinder my enjoyment of this, but I'll go into why later on. So firstly, this is a kind of feminist dystopia about a world in which fertile women are a rarity, and the women who are still fertile, sort of lesser citizens in society. Women are taken away from their jobs, they're taken away from their men, and they are no longer able to access their bank account and their funds and their savings and things. They are then given to higher up in society couples who cannot have children of their own, and the idea is that the handmaids will give them a child. They have ceremonies every month where the wife of the couple will hold the handmaid's wrists while the man does his stuff down below, and it's really disturbing. It's, even though this was written in the 80s, very much reads like it could be a dystopian future in our world today. So it's really stood the test of time. The only thing I would say on a reread of this is that it didn't have the same impact, and I think that's often the case when you reread books, but for me this really disturbed me when I first read it, and especially the last scene, it really shook me up, and it took me quite a while to get past the thoughts that this book gave me. This time it didn't have that impact, and if anything I felt like the story itself was a little bit lacking. This is very much focused on the world rather than the story of the people, and in the series I definitely feel like they've overcome that by making more of the story. So I kind of felt, and this is why I felt like watching the first episode ruined the experience of rereading this for me, I kind of felt like most of the story was actually crammed into that first episode, and the series has then run on with it, whereas rereading this I was expecting it to be more, and actually it was pretty much just the events of the first episode, obviously with a few other things that have occurred later on in the series, but the main events that were really shocking were put into the first episode, and I can see why. But it did ruin my enjoyment of this a little bit. I would say this is a book that could have been a lot more than it is, which is sad. However, it is still fascinating, and it's still a really interesting read and worth reading if you are into feminism and things like that. Then I read The Knife Drawer by Patricia Tarrant, which I'm only going to speak about briefly here. I have done a full review of this, which I will link down below. This was the 4th Salt book in my Paddling in Independent Publishers series, and I really enjoyed this. It's a bizarre read, and I don't think it's for everyone. It kind of riffs off of the story of the 3 blind mice and goes from there, but there's a lot of personification in here, and it deals with a lot of mental illness and a lot of guilt and things like that, and it's really interesting. I think what I love about Patricia Tarrant is her writing. Her writing is so strong, and she just has this really poetic way of dealing with difficult issues. On paper this wouldn't have been the kind of book that I would enjoy, but I really loved it. Then I finished the first half of the month with Do Not Read This Book by Pat Moon. This was my, kind of a cheat, but this was my YA book for the month. So this is one of my favourite books when I was little. I wanted a quick YA read, so I thought this would do. It's kind of middle grade, but I'm counting it as YA because it's on my YA shelves. And I wanted to reread this to see how I re-experienced it. I probably read it first when I was about 9 years old. And I have to say I didn't overly love this. It reminds me very much of the Georgia Renison books, the Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging type of books. It's basically this girl Finch's diary, and she's only 11, so she's a little bit younger, and it's definitely aimed at a younger audience than the Georgia Renison books are, but it very much, her voice is much the same. I have to say it's interesting rereading it, because at the time that I read it when I was younger I didn't think she was a bad person, but actually rereading this, Finch does some really selfish things, much like Georgia Renison does. You can kind of forgive her them because she's young and she doesn't know the way of the world yet. But basically this follows a few different subjects. So her nan, or her adopted nan Nolly, goes into hospital with a heart attack because she smokes too much, so it deals with Finch trying to get her nan to stop smoking. Finch's dad has died and her mum has got a new man, and it deals with how Finch deals with that. And it also deals a little bit with abuse and things like that. So it does cram quite a lot of subjects in here in quite a short book, and I think for kids this is probably really good. If you're about 11 or under the age that Finch is, I think it would really speak to you, and it really spoke to me when I was younger. I used to love it. I thought it was hilarious. but I have to say it didn't really stand up to the test of time, and I was a bit disappointed with this one. However, Finch does have a house bunny called Graham, and you know, I love house bunnies. I have two myself, so that was a highlight. But then that, it fell a bit flat for me. I don't know if I had read this without having read it in the past, whether I would have enjoyed it more. It's quite possible, but as I say, it did not float my boat that much. So those are the books I have read so far this month. It's been kind of a mixed bag. It's not been awful. I've had 2 4-star reads. I gave Handmaid's Tale 4 stars and also The Knife Drawer 4 stars. So it's not going too badly so far. I'm hoping for the rest of the month to participate in the readathon, which I don't think I'm going to get 7 books done at all. I'm not even aiming for that goal. However, I do think it's going to be good for getting my reading up a little bit more in the next half of the month. Let me know down below what you've been reading, and I will see you next time. Bye!